We designed a few exhibits with Midjourney and ChatGPT for you to look at and critique.
Uh-huh.
So here, take a look at these.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I think AI is pretty amazing. Obviously, tremendous potential in the future. It works outside of realms of reality in certain ways.
Graz, thanks for joining this episode of Show and Sell. You lead a very decorated, award-winning design team. So let me ask you this. How does design influence the perceived value of products and services?
Well, from an exhibit standpoint, the trade show exhibit might be your only opportunity to meet face-to-face with that potential client. And they may never have the ability to see your facility, your factory. They may never know any of the background that went into the development and research of a particular product. So the trade show exhibit is that face-to-face branding tool, that marketing tool that you're utilizing for that one-time first interaction. And so it has to basically quickly say a lot about you. And so, fit and finish comes into play, attention to detail. It doesn't have to be opulent, but it has to, say a certain level of value and so forth, and care. It has to preach a level of care in regard to your product, because you're obviously trying to convince this person that what you're offering is great and it's well thought out. And the exhibit itself needs to do the same kind of thing.
What would you say to someone who doesn't want to invest in better design or brand awareness at a trade show?
The way we look at it is the exhibit, the packaging, the logo of the product and so forth, all of these things basically stand in for all of the sweat equity that you've put into developing your product or service. The consumer who is approaching the exhibit doesn't have the opportunity to know immediately all of the history that you have behind that development. So that exhibit structure and the way you present yourself and the way you present that product basically stands in for it. And it says, look, I truly care about what I am presenting here. So it's those small details, and obviously too, there's aspects of clarity of message and so forth and functionality that come into play, the ease of walking through a demo with a client and making sure that it's very easy to understand and navigate through the exhibit, and can I get where I need to go? All of that comes into play in the design phase as well.
Does the size of the booth really matter? Is bigger always better when it comes to trade show exhibits?
The size of the booth can matter. Not necessarily always bigger is better, but one aspect that a larger exhibit provides, or one benefit is it creates more of a buffer. It allows you to separate yourself and your guests from all of the commotion happening on the show floor. So now we can kind of move them into the center area of the exhibit, and suddenly we're moved away from all of the traffic. So you can really start to now get kind of lost in that one-on-one conversation and deep dive into a product.
What are some of the most common mistakes a designer can make when designing an exhibit?
I think some of the common mistakes, there's a number of possible avenues for mistakes, but some of them can be just simply a focus on sort of the nuts and bolts aspect. A client comes to us to say they need this many workstations, they need a conference room and so forth. But we need to make sure we're taking all of those things into account. That's sort of the easy part. Then simultaneously, we need to make sure that we are thinking about what their message is and who their target audience is. And are we capturing or are we creating something that contains enough impact to draw those folks in before we even get to utilize any of those nuts and bolts functions of the booth.
And that's very cool. I saw a video recently, and it was a game that this person was playing, and their back was facing the exhibit, and a person was standing in front of them, and they pretty much read the text that was written on the exhibit, and the person whose back was turned away from the exhibit had to guess what kind of products, services that company provided. So that messaging hierarchy, it's so much more important than people tend to think. So with that, what is the most unexpected request that you've received from a client for a trade show exhibit? Because when I came here, my idea of trade shows was table and drapes. I had no idea that it gets as big as it gets, like Consumer Electronics Show or a SHOT Show or.
Yeah, we've had some fairly outlandish ones. Top of mind, I would say we had the request for a 3-story elevator and spiral slide incorporated into the exhibit. We also had the request for 2 huge water tanks flanking the sides of a presentation stage where synchronized swimmers perform during the stage presentation. So those were pretty outlandish requests that you don't see every day for sure.
What industry was that in?
Gaming industry.
Gaming.
Yeah, gaming, of course.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, how do you deal with conflicting expectations between, maybe a possible client and your design team? And what is most often the basis for conflicting expectations?
Probably the biggest cause of conflict might either be budgetary limitations of a given project or space limitations for a given project. But it's up to the designer to try and solve those issues as best they can, work within the parameters that they have, and then basically explain to the client, here's what we can do, and here are some of the limitations we're running into, that sort of thing. And it's really just kind of a give and take. We're trying to both get to the finish line of giving them a great product and doing it at an affordable rate and so forth. It's really kind of a team approach, really, between the design entity and the customer.
Speaking of expectations, so the future of design, it's going in a very interesting direction with, all the AI software coming out with ChatGPT, Midjourney, a few others, and you can actually go in and you can prompt the program, and it'll design an exhibit for you. So before this interview, we designed a few exhibits with Midjourney and ChatGPT for you to look at and critique. So here, take a look at these.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I think AI is pretty amazing. Obviously, tremendous potential in the future. The way we utilize it right now is we don't look at it as a source for finished designs. We look at it as a quick way to kind of fan out concepts, preliminary concepts. We can enter in information, and even some of the software we use allows us to not only enter in keyword information, but we can actually enter in CAD structural information as well to help really define some of the physical attributes of the exhibit beforehand. But it does a fantastic job of kind of exploring different directions, different themes very quickly, more so than you could do even with pen and paper. So a lot of times we will kind of work through some AI concepts, and you almost take a quick glance at it and then put it away. Just enough to kind of get a rough idea, but you're not looking to duplicate anything verbatim. Yeah. But as far as, again, the potential of it, very strong. And like I said, I think it's one of those things where we view it more as a tool that the designer can utilize and exploit and build off of, rather than, say, a replacement for the design person.
There's some of the materials that it looks like it's using, it'd be hard to identify.
Yeah, absolutely. It works outside of realms of reality in certain ways. But again, that's okay. You know, we were just, again, kind of viewing it as kind of a rough idea, rough sketch. And then that also kind of opens up the opportunity of how do we interpret some of these things if we choose to interpret them.
Where do you see the future of design in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, on the exhibit front, obviously AI is still going to continue to play a bigger and bigger role as the technology matures. From an exhibit structural standpoint, we see a lot of aluminum being used currently, probably overused to the point of we've got parity across the board with many exhibit houses, and that will correct itself over time. It's kind of a situation where the trend just sort of kind of runs itself to the point of oversaturation. But we still are dealing, I think, with a little bit of correction in regard to pricing and so forth coming out of the pandemic. So as that takes place, then we'll start to see more of the traditional dives into pure custom exhibitry and so forth, where a client realizes that, hey, we need to step away from what everybody else is doing. And then on the technology front of, you know, whether it's lighting or AV, everything's just continuing to get lighter, thinner, smaller. Layers of transparency is becoming very viable now, even in small exhibitry. And I'm talking about for not just lighting, but also for video delivery and so forth. So a lot of different surfaces are coming onto the market that just allow us to do things in small touches here and there, even in a small exhibit space, that can really allow a particular exhibit to stand out from the crowd.
Graz, thank you again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And hope we'll catch up again another time.
Thanks, Gail.